Okay, Namaste, Dhanavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 23, Text 19. Archir Nama Maharajni Tatpatnyanu Sukumarya Tad Arhacha Yatpadbhyam Sparshanam Bhuva. The queen, the wife of Pṛthu Maharaj, whose name was Archi, followed her husband into the forest. Since she was a queen, her body was very delicate. Although she did not deserve to live in the forest, she voluntarily touched her lotus feet to the ground. Purport. Because Pṛthu Maharaj's wife was the queen, and also a daughter of the king, she never experienced walking on the ground, for queens used to never come out of the palace. They certainly never went to the forests and tolerated all the difficulties of living in the wilderness. In Vedic civilization, there are hundreds of similar examples of such renunciation on the part of queens and dedication to the husbands. The goddess of fortune, Mother Sita, followed her husband Ramchandra when he went to the forest. Lord Ramchandra went to the forest in compliance with the order of his father, Mahārāja Dasarath, in the compliance of the order of his father, Mahārāja Dasarath. But Mother Sita was not so ordered. Nonetheless, she voluntarily accepted the path of her husband. Similarly, Gandhari, the wife of King Dhritarashtra, also followed her husband into the forest. Being the wives of great personalities like Pṛthu, Lord Ramchandra, and Dhritarashtra, these were ideal, chaste women. Such queens also instructed the general people by showing them how to become a chaste wife and follow the husband in every stage of life. When the husband is king, she sits beside him as queen, and when he goes to the forest, she also follows, despite having to tolerate all kinds of difficulty in living in the forest. Therefore, it is said here, Atad Arha. Although she did not want to touch her feet to the ground, she nonetheless accepted all difficulties when she went to the forest with her husband. Text 20. Ativa Bhartur Vrata Dharmanistaya Sushrushaya Charsa Deha Yatraya Navintadartim Parikarshitapisa Prayakskara Sparshanamana Nirvati. Although she was not accustomed to such difficulties, Queen Archi followed her husband in the regulative principles of living in the forest like great sages. She lay down on the ground and ate only fruits, flowers, and leaves. And because she was not fit for these activities, she became frail and thin. Yet because of the pleasure she derived in serving her husband, she did not feel any difficulties. Purport. The words Bhartur Vrata Dharma Nistaya indicate that a woman's duty or religious principle is to serve her husband in all conditions. In Vedic civilization, a man is taught from the beginning of his life to become a brahmachari, then an ideal grihastha, then vanaprast, then sannyas, and the wife is taught just to follow the husband strictly in all conditions of life. After the period of brahmachari, a man accepts a householder's life, and the woman is also taught by her parents to be a chaste wife. Thus, when a girl and boy are united, both are trained for a life of dedicated to a higher purpose. The boy is trained to execute his duty in accordance with the higher purpose of life, and the girl is trained to follow him. The chaste wife's duty is to keep her husband pleased in householder life in all respects. And when the husband retires from family life, she used to go to the forest and adopt the life of Vanaprast or Vanavasi. At that time, the wife is to follow her husband and take care of him, just as she took care of him in the householder life. But when the husband takes the renounced order of life, namely sannyas, the wife is to return home and to become a saintly woman, setting an example for her children and daughters-in-law, and showing them how to live a life of austerity. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, his wife Vishnupriya Devi, although only 16 years old, also took the vow of austerity due to her husband's leaving home. She chanted her beads, and finishing one round, she collected 1 grain of rice. In this way, as many rounds as she chanted, she would receive the same number of rice grains, and then cook them, so take prasad. This is called austerity. Even today in India, widows or women whose husbands have taken sannyas follow the principle of austerity, even though they live with their children. Pṛthu Maharaja's wife, Archie, was steadily determined to execute the duty of a wife, and while her husband was in the forest, she followed him in eating only fruits and leaves and lying down on the ground. Since a woman's body is considerably more delicate than a man's, Queen Archie became very frail and thin. Parikarshita. When one engages in austerities, his body generally becomes lean and thin. Becoming fat is not a very good qualification in spiritual life, because a person who is engaged in spiritual life must reduce the comforts of the body, namely eating, sleeping, and mating, to a minimum. Although Queen Archie became very thin from living in the forest according to regulative principles, she was not unhappy, for she was enjoying the honor of serving her great husband. Text 21. Deham vipanakila chaitanadikam patyu pridhivyadhaitasya chatmana alaksha kinchik chavilapya satchati chitam ataro payad adrisanuni. When Queen Archie saw that her husband, who had been so merciful to her and the earth, no longer showed symptoms of life, she lamented for a little while, and then built a fiery pyre on top of a hill and placed the body of her husband on it. Purport. After seeing all the life symptoms in her husband stop, the queen lamented for a while. The word kinchit means for a little while. The queen was completely aware that her husband was not dead, although the symptoms of life, action, intelligence, and sense perception had ceased. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.13, Dehi nosmin yata dehe kumaram yovanam jara, tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyate. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. When a living entity transfers from one body to another, a process generally known as death, a sane man does not lament, for he knows that the living entity is not dead, but is simply transferred from one body to another. The queen should have been afraid of being alone in the forest with the body or her husband, but since she was a great wife of a great personality, she lamented for a while, but immediately understood that she had many duties to perform. Thus, instead of wasting her time in lamentation, she immediately prepared a fiery pyre on top of a hill, and then placed the body of her husband on it to be buried. Maharaj Pṛthu is described here as Daita, for not only was he the king of the earth, but he treated the earth as his protected child. Similarly, he protected his wife also. It was the duty of the king to give protection to everyone, especially to the earth or land which he ruled, as well as the citizens and his family members. Since Pṛthu Maharaj was a perfect king, he gave protection to everyone, and therefore he is described here as Daita. Text 22. Vidhaya krityam hridani chalapluta tat tadvodakam bhartur udhara karmana natva divistam stridasam striparitya vivesha vanhim jayati bharturpada. After this, the queen executed the necessary funerary functions and offered oblations of water. After bathing in the river, she offered obeisances to various demigods situated in the sky in different planetary systems. She then circumambulated the fire, and while thinking of the lotus feet of her husband, entered its flames. Purport. The entrance of a chaste wife into the flames of the pyre of her dead husband is known as saha gamana, which means dying with the husband. This system of saha gamana had been practiced in Vedic civilization from time immemorial. Even after the British period in India, this practice was rigidly observed. But soon it degraded to the point that even when the wife was not strong enough to enter the fire of her dead husband, the relatives would force her to enter. Thus, this practice had to be stopped. But even today, there are still some solitary cases where a wife will voluntarily enter the fire and die with her husband. Even after 1940, we personally knew of a chaste wife who died in this way. Text 23. Vilokyanugatam sadvim pridhum viravaram patim tustuvorvarada devar devapatnya sahasrasa. After observing this brave act performed by the chaste wife Archi, the wife of the great king Pṛthu, many thousands of the wives of the demigods, along with their husbands, offered prayers to the queen, for they were very much satisfied. Text 24. Kurvatya kushumasharam tasmin mandara sanuni nadat svamara turyeshu grinanti sma parasparam. At that time, the demigods were situated on the top of Mandara hill, and all their wives began to shower flowers on the funeral pyre and began to talk amongst themselves as follows. Text 25. Devya uchu aho iyam vadhordanya yachaivam bhubujam patim sarvatmana patim beje yagyesham shrir vadhor iva. The wives of the demigods said, "All glories to Queen Archi. We can see that this queen of the great king Pṛthu, the emperor of the kings of the world, has served her husband with mind, speech, and body exactly as the goddess of fortune serves the supreme personality of Godhead, Yagyesha, or Vishnu." Purport. In this verse, the words Yagyesham Shrir Vadhur Iva indicate that Queen Archi served her husband just as the goddess of fortune serves the supreme personality of Godhead Vishnu. We can observe that even in the history of this world, when Lord Krishna, the supreme Vishnu, was ruling over Dwarka, Queen Rukmini, who was the chief of all of Krishna's queens, used to serve Lord Krishna personally, in spite of having many hundreds of maidservants to assist her. Similarly, the goddess of fortune in the Vaikuntha planets also serves Narayan personally, although there are many thousands of devotees prepared to serve the Lord. This practice is also followed by the wives of the demigods, and in the past days, the wives of men also followed the same principle. In Vedic civilization, the husband and wife were not separated by such man-made laws as divorce. We would understand the necessity for maintaining family life in human society, and should thus abolish this artificial law known as divorce. The husband and wife should live in Krishna consciousness and follow in the footsteps of Lakshmi Narayan or Krishna Rukmini. In this way, peace and harmony can be possible within this world. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 26 on Friday. Before we end, were there any comments or contributions from the assembled devotees? Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Mahārāja ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees. Sama Bhaktivedanta Vrinda ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham ki Jai, Nrsimhapali Dham ki Jai, Mayapur Dham ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju ki Jai. Ganga Mai, Yamuna Mai ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham ki Jai, Giri Govardhan, Gopta Govardhan Dham ki Jai, Sham Kund, Radha Kund ki Jai, Tulsi Devi, Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi ki Jai. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai, Scientific Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai. Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Institute ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki Jai. Nitai Gauda Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Jai Adityananda Prabhu ki Jai.
Jai, that was a great reading again, Prabhu. Jai. It's amazing, isn't it? The yogi, the yogi, they're yogis, aren't they? They just like go in the fire and return the various elements to their origin, basically, and they just move on. It's just a swift transaction in devotion. Incredible.
Yeah, I think it's not so much about returning the elements back to the earth, but about the chastity, about how the heart of the devotee is willing to do anything, for the pleasure of the Lord. And so this is just like an incredible example of willing to do anything, being completely self-surrendered, I think that's the main point, which is very exemplary, and I hope I can be like that.
Yeah, it surpasses every other concern, really, and it has its own innate, powerful, attractive, and tasteful quality. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, wonderful.
Jai Prabhu. Take care. My
Jai.
Dhanavats to you.
Dhanavats, Prabhu.